The battle lasted exactly 7 minutes before the human exploration vessel Tenacity was disabled. Its captain, Eliza Martins, stood defiant on the bridge as armored Galactic hegemony soldiers poured through the breached airlock. "Remember Protocol Omega," she whispered to her crew before being stunned into unconsciousness. The hegemony admiral, a towering 6-limbed Kraxian, mandibles clicking in amusement, surveyed the captured humans with contempt. Pathetic. Barely Category 4 sapience. He casually flicked a claw through the ship's database, dismissing Earth's technological achievements. Processed them for the Void Claw. As the 11 humans, 7 engineers, 3 scientists, and a diplomat were marched to the prison transport, none of the hegemony soldiers noticed Engineer Chen's subtle smile as her captors confiscated exactly the items she'd wanted them to find, leaving her true resources hidden. Commander Zex Tahar, once the hegemony's most decorated tactical officer, before a political misstep landed him this humiliating assignment, didn't even stand as the humans were processed. Lower deck containment. Standard rations. He turned away, missing the calculated glances the humans exchanged. The first moves in a game the hegemony didn't realize had begun. The Void Claw loomed against the backdrop of stars, a brutalist monstrosity of angular metal and pulsing energy conduits. Originally a frontline battleship, it had been downgraded to prison transport after sustaining critical damage in the Orion conflict. The docking procedure was mechanical and efficient, with no ceremony for the new arrivals deemed unworthy of formal processing protocols. "Move, fragile ones," growled the escort guard, a hulking Dravax whose exoskeleton clattered with each lumbering step. The humans were herded through a series of decontamination chambers, their dignity stripped along with their remaining possessions. Dr. Layton, the xenobiologist, carefully catalogued every detail of the ship's interior, his eyes darting from one system to another, memorizing specifications and weaknesses. "Species," demanded the processing officer, not bothering to look up from his terminal. "Human," replied diplomatic officer Helena Reyes, her tone deliberately meek. "From Sol System, 3rd planet." The officer snorted. "Ah yes, the water-based bipeds with the inefficient respiratory system. Nutritional restrictions? We require trace minerals not found in standard hegemony protein paste," Reyes offered hesitantly. "Our digestive systems cannot process xenocarbon compounds." The officer made a notation with obvious irritation. "Special accommodations. Typical of lesser species to be high maintenance." He had no way of knowing that Reyes had just secured them access to the chemical components they would need for the first phase of their plan. Security Officer Jackson observed the guard rotation during their transit to the lower decks, counting steps between surveillance nodes and identifying blind spots in the monitoring system. The Void Claw's security protocols were designed for containing species whose physical capabilities posed obvious threats, not for humans whose danger lay in their minds rather than their bodies. The lower deck's prisoner section reeked of recycled air and desperation. Cells lined a central corridor, transparent force fields, allowing constant surveillance. Each chamber contained minimal amenities: a sleep platform, sanitation unit, and nutrition dispensary. The humans were separated into 3 adjacent cells, a standard containment protocol intended to prevent coordinated resistance. "Regulation says 2 exercise periods per cycle," announced the duty officer, a junior Kraxian with obvious disdain for his assignment. "Any disruptive behavior results in immediate suspension of privileges." As the guards departed, Chen pressed her palm against the cell barrier, testing its electrical frequency. "Perfect," she murmured, too softly for the surveillance pickups to detect. Exactly as the intelligence briefing indicated. Dr. Okofa sat cross-legged on his sleep platform, eyes closed in apparent meditation. What the guards couldn't see was that he was systematically testing the neural interface of their prisoner monitoring system, confirming his theory about its incompatibility with human brain patterns. In her separate cell, Captain Martins regained consciousness and immediately initiated the contingency they had prepared for months before ever leaving Earth orbit. She scratched her forearm 4 times in rapid succession. The signal that Protocol Omega was officially active. The tenacity had been sacrificed. The capture had been planned. And now, aboard the Voidclaw, the true mission could begin. Primitive species adapt slowly, lectured the Hegemony Training Manual, a fundamental misconception that engineer Sarah Chen exploited with ruthless precision. By day 3, she had induced a pattern of flickering lights in her cell that appeared random, but actually mapped the Voidclaw's power distribution network. Chen smiled as the guard pounded his fist against her door. Stop that annoying blinking human. Perfect. They thought it was a malfunction. Meanwhile, Science Officer Dr. Marcus Okafor feigned a seizure during interrogation, using the medical scan to confirm his theory. The ship's quantum neurosecurity relied on brainwave patterns fundamentally incompatible with human neurology. They literally can't see how we think, he whispered to Chen during meal period. In the recreation area, Diplomatic Officer Helena Reyes deliberately lost gambling games to the insectoid Vrex prisoners, each loss exchanging worthless human trinkets for crucial information. The ventilation system connects all decks, chitted her Vrex contact, mandibles working nervously. But it's filled with poison gas. Reyes smiled. Poison to whom? When the ship's secondary power grid suddenly fluctuated. A malfunction Chen had secretly engineered. The humans requested to help repair it. The guards' barking laughter echoed down the corridor as Commander Zex Tahar approved the request. Let the primitives burn their fingers, he sneered. It might be entertaining. The human repair team exchanged glances as they were escorted to engineering. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The first phase of Protocol Omega involved creating a comprehensive profile of the Voidclaw's operational vulnerabilities. A task engineer Chen coordinated through subtle gestures during communal meal periods. Each human had a specialized focus. Each gathered critical intelligence without raising suspicion. Dr. Patel, the xenochemist, analyzed the nutritional supplements they'd been granted, identifying compounds that could be isolated and repurposed. The Craxian biochemistry is fascinating, she remarked loudly enough for guards to hear. Their nervous systems depend on selenium-based synaptic triggers. What she didn't say was how easily those systems could be disrupted with the right chemical cocktail. Security Officer Jackson had identified 7 blind spots in the surveillance network by deliberately triggering minor infractions and tracking which went unpunished. The lower deck's waste reclamation system provided the perfect dead zone, a 3-meter section where neural scanners overlapped incorrectly, creating a feedback loop that registered only static baseline readings. Request permission to clean sanitation filters, she asked the duty officer. Human waste is apparently causing system inefficiencies. The request was granted with disgust and provided access to crucial maintenance tunnels connecting to the ship's central water purification system. During exercise periods, Communications Officer Rodriguez noted the exact frequencies of the guard-comm units by tilting her head at specific angles, the micro-implant behind her ear recording transmission patterns for later analysis. Their encryption is simplistic, she whispered to Dr. Okafor. Designed to prevent prisoners from understanding, not from accessing. The Voidclaw's structural weaknesses multiplied with each passing day. Captain Martins developed chronic coughing fits, requiring regular visits to medical. Each trip allowed her to map another section of the ship while appearing frail and disease-prone to her captors. The first test of their collective intelligence came when Maintenance Chief Grolvac inspected the human quarters, suspicious of their apparently docile behavior. He activated his neural scanner, sweeping it across Dr. Okafor's cell. Unusual readings, he muttered, adjusting the settings. Your brainwave pattern appears chaotic. Okafor shrugged helplessly. Human neurology is notoriously difficult to interpret. Our species evolved with significant individual variation. The maintenance chief grunted in frustration. Inefficient design. No wonder your species accomplished so little. He deactivated the scanner, convinced the readings were merely an inconsequential anomaly. When the ship's secondary power grid fluctuated precisely 48 hours later, Commander Zex Tahar received the request from the human prisoners with amusement. The weak ones believe they can assist with engineering matters, he announced to his bridge crew. Such delightful presumption deserves reward. Let them try, and fail. It will reinforce their proper place in the hierarchy. The chief engineer protested mildly. Sir, allowing Category 4 prisoners access to critical systems violates Regulation 37B. Zex Tahar waved a dismissive appendage. Override granted. Document this as a psychological experiment in primitive species' reaction to failure. It might salvage some value from this tedious assignment. As Engineer Chen was escorted toward the malfunctioning power node, she forced her face to remain impassive. The power fluctuation had damaged exactly the security barriers they needed to access. Now they would have legitimate reason to handle hegemony tools that could be subtly modified for their true purpose. The assessment phase was complete. The exploitation phase could begin. Your species requires constant supervision, growled Guard Captain Murthak, towering over Engineer Chen. Unlike your primitive brains, we can function efficiently on minimal sleep. Chen lowered her eyes submissively while calculating the advantage this misconception provided. Humans actually needed less sleep than most hegemony species, giving them hours of unmonitored work time. The repairs proceeded with meticulous precision. By day, the humans worked under guard, fixing legitimate issues while gathering intelligence. By night, they executed their real mission. Security Officer Jackson crawled through access tunnels officially rated too narrow for sentient navigation, installing bypass circuits that created an invisible secondary command network. They designed this ship for their physiology, she whispered to Dr. Okafor as they met at a junction point, not realizing smaller bodies could be an advantage. Meanwhile, Dr. Okafor was reprogramming maintenance drones through a brilliant hack, modifying their recognition protocols to respond to specific electromagnetic frequencies generated by devices the humans had built from discarded food synthesizer parts. When the Voidclaw's chief engineer noticed improved efficiency in life support systems, he took credit for the optimization in his report to Commander Zex Tahar, never suspecting the humans had recalibrated it to allow selective atmospheric control. At the weekly inspection, Zex Tahar actually commended the humans for their adequate assistance. Chen bowed her head to hide her smile. The hegemony's confidence would be their downfall. The repair authorization opened doors, literally and figuratively, throughout the Voidclaw. Engineer Chen established a hidden workshop within an abandoned all-processing chamber, accessible only through a maintenance shaft requiring human flexibility to navigate. Inside this sanctum, surrounded by salvaged components, the true transformation of the ship began. The hegemony programming architecture is hierarchical, explained systems analyst Rivera, examining the circuit board that extracted from a decommissioned security drone. It assumes absolute authority flows from top to bottom. He grinned, soldering a bypass node onto the board. They've never considered parallel systems operating independently. At 300 ship time, when Craction neurology demanded deep sleep cycles, Jackson threaded her way through the ship's nervous system. The access shafts, tight, dusty spaces the hegemony engineers considered unreachable, became human highways. She installed miniature relay stations at junction points, creating an invisible network that mirrored the ship's official communications but remained completely independent. Status, whispered Chen through the microtransceiver they'd fabricated from repurposed medical sensors. Section 7 complete, Jackson reported, wiping sweat from her forehead as she wedged herself between coolant pipes. The command override for aft engineering is operational. Captain Martins maintained meticulous coordination of their activities, ensuring no single team member knew every aspect of their plan. A compartmentalization that protected the operation even if one of them broke under interrogation. Each night, a different pairing of humans would slip from their cells through the security blind spot Rodriguez had identified, conduct their assigned modifications, and return before the guard shift change. The modifications themselves were brilliantly designed to appear as system optimizations. When Dr. Okofor recalibrated life support to create isolated atmospheric control zones, the ship's diagnostic systems registered improved efficiency. Chief Engineer Grolvac actually received a commendation for outstanding maintenance performance from Central Command. Perhaps primitives have some minor utility after all, Zex Taha mused during the officers' meal period. They seem to have an instinctive understanding of obsolete systems. The humans' most audacious achievement came when they reprogrammed the maintenance drones' recognition protocols. Dr. Potel had discovered that the drones operated on a limited artificial intelligence network, designed to recognize hegemony command badges. By introducing a subtle modification to their optical sensors, she made them equally responsive to specific patterns of light emitted by devices the humans had constructed from food synthesizer components. Execute Test Sequence Alpha, Chen directed during an authorized maintenance period. Rodriguez activated the emitter concealed in her palm. Across the room, a maintenance drone paused its cleaning routine, rotated 37 degrees, and resumed operation, now following the human's instructions rather than its original programming. Success, murmured Patel, careful to maintain a neutral expression for the surveillance systems. By the fourth week of their captivity, the humans had established control over key ship systems without a single alarm being triggered. Life support, maintenance, internal communications, and security monitoring had all been subtly modified to accept human commands through their parallel network. The Voigtlaw was no longer purely a hegemony vessel. It had become a hybrid entity, with an invisible human architecture taking root within the original systems like a meticulously cultivated fungal network, growing, connecting, spreading through every vital system. And the hegemony remained completely unaware of the transformation happening beneath their feet. Humans have the weakest natural defenses in the known galaxy, lectured Security Chief Krasnar, demonstrating restraint techniques to junior guards using Engineer Potel as an unwilling model. No claws, no venom, minimal muscle density. What he failed to notice was Patel studying the molecular composition of the restraint cuffs with each painful demonstration. Later that night, in the makeshift lab they'd established inside a maintenance drone recharging station, Dr. Layton examined the chemical sample Patel had collected. Perfect. This will destabilize at precisely 40.3 degrees Celsius. The human's weaponization program accelerated across multiple fronts, each team member specializing in one area to maintain operational security. Dr. Layton converted kitchen sonic cleaners into disruptors calibrated to hegemony neural frequencies, capable of dropping guards without harming other species. Test successful, he whispered after a malfunctioning device caused a guard to collapse in convulsions. Engineer Potel gathered atmospheric filtration crystals during authorized maintenance, reconfiguring them into aerosolized paralytic agents. They mock our respiratory system as inefficient, she told Chen as they worked, never considering we might weaponize it. The most ingenious creation came when Communications Officer Rodriguez discovered she could modify the ship's intercom to broadcast at frequencies that induced hallucinations in hegemony neural structures, while remaining harmless to humans. The first test came when a guard patrol inexplicably panicked and fled from the human containment sector, reporting shadow creatures that footage reviews couldn't confirm. Commander Zex Taha ordered neural scans of the affected guards, never suspecting the humans were testing their weapons, hiding each component in plain sight, preparing for a war the hegemony didn't know was coming. Adaptation through tool creation, Captain Martins had lectured during their mission briefing months ago on Earth. That's humanity's evolutionary advantage. This philosophy guided their weaponization program aboard the Voidclaw, turning the ship itself into their arsenal. Xenobiologist Dr. Warren focused on exploiting hegemony physiological vulnerabilities. During a sanctioned research session in the medical bay, she'd accessed the species database under the pretense of treating her chronic respiratory condition. Their auditory processing is hypersensitive in the 18 to 22 kHz range, she reported during their encrypted evening briefing. Exposure causes neural disruption similar to severe intoxication. Engineer Rivera salvaged components from discarded entertainment units, rebuilding them into directional sonic emitters. The devices resembled standard cleaning tools, but could project targeted frequencies capable of incapacitating hegemony species while remaining inaudible to humans. Testing phase complete, Rivera confirmed after subtly activating a prototype during maintenance duty. The Crackshin supervisor had suddenly clutched his head, mandibles twitching erratically, before stumbling to the medical bay reporting inner ear parasites. Dr. Patel's expertise in chemistry yielded perhaps their most devastating innovation. The atmospheric filtration system used crystalline compounds to scrub carbon dioxide from recycled air. Compounds that, when reconfigured at the molecular level, could be weaponized. The base elements are similar to Earth's selenium compounds, she explained, handling the crystals with specialized gloves they'd fashioned from medical supplies. When aerosolized, they'd bind to Crackshin neural receptors, inducing temporary paralysis. Security Officer Jackson established weapons caches throughout the ship, hiding components in ventilation ducts, behind loose panels, and inside maintenance robots they'd reprogrammed. None contained assembled weapons. Instead, each cache held specific components that, when combined with elements from other locations, would create functional armaments. Compartmentalization is our security, she reminded the team. No single discovery can compromise our arsenal. Their most psychologically devastating weapon emerged from Rodriguez's communications expertise. By analyzing hegemony neural scanning technology, she discovered it could be reversed, transmitting signals rather than merely receiving them. Their security systems work on feedback principles, she explained while modifying a standard intercom node. With minimal reconfiguration, we can broadcast at frequencies that induce specific neural responses. The first field test exceeded expectations. A modified intercom node near the guard barracks transmitted a low-level frequency overnight that induced anxiety and paranoia. The following day, 3 guards requested transfers, reporting disturbing dreams of humans watching from within the walls. The medical officer diagnosed standard space psychosis, prescribing neural stabilizers that interacted precisely as Dr. Warren had predicted, making the guards even more susceptible to their next frequency test. Commander Zex Tahar reviewed the incident reports with growing frustration. Find the environmental factor causing these hallucinations, he ordered his chief medical officer. This ship is becoming a psychiatric ward. The medical scans, equipment diagnostics, and environmental tests revealed nothing, because the humans had ensured their weapons existed in technological blind spots the hegemony couldn't conceptualize. They weren't building conventional weapons. They were transforming the Voidclaw itself into a multi-layered weapon system calibrated specifically to hegemony vulnerabilities. Preparation complete, Captain Martins confirmed after reviewing the team's reports. We've created everything necessary for the next phase. The humans now possessed an invisible arsenal distributed throughout the ship, and the hegemony remained utterly unaware of the nightmare about to be unleashed. The primitive species cannot cooperate effectively, declared the Hegemony Xenosociology textbook. Diplomatic officer Helena Reyes proved this catastrophically wrong during what appeared to be a routine recreation period. Your people control the ventilation systems, she said quietly to Kith, an Arathi prisoner, a floating gas bag creature, who'd been categorized as decorative by the hegemony despite possessing remarkable psionic abilities. We have weapons that need deployment. The Arathi's translucent body pulsed with interest. In another corner, Rise engaged a cluster of insectoid Vrex prisoners, whose resistance movement had been crushed by the hegemony decades ago. Your acid glands could dissolve these specific junction points, she explained through a makeshift translator, showing diagrams Chen had prepared. A Vrex commander's compound eyes narrowed. And if we refuse, Rise smiled. Then we free ourselves and leave you behind. Most crucial was her meeting with the crystalline Folians, beings who could safely interface with energy conduits that would kill organic species. The hegemony uses you as living battery components, Ray said bluntly to their faceted leader. We see you as equals with unique abilities. The recreation period ended with no obvious changes, yet everything had changed. That night, while guards monitored standard biosigns from their stations, representatives from 7 species gathered in a maintenance shaft junction officially marked uninhabitable. Engineer Chen displayed a holographic model of the Void Claw with critical systems highlighted. Alone, none of us can take this ship, Reyes told the assembled aliens. Together, coordinated through human strategic planning. She let the implication hang in the recycled air. The Vrex commander's mandibles clicked decisively. When do we start? The crystalline Folian representative resonated agreement, followed by the others. As the council dispersed through different maintenance routes, Commander Zex Tahar slept soundly in his quarters, unaware that the most dangerous alliance in hegemony history had just formed under his command. Diplomatic Officer Reyes had studied xenopolitics at the United Earth Academy, specializing in oppressed species psychology. This expertise proved invaluable as she meticulously cultivated relationships with key prisoner groups, each selected for specific capabilities that complemented human adaptability. The hegemony's greatest weakness, she explained during their clandestine council meeting, is their hierarchical worldview. They cannot conceive of true cooperation between species they consider inherently unequal. The Arathi representative, a billowing translucent entity named Whisper Between Stars, undulated in agreement. They believe us mere atmospheric decorations, incapable of complex thought. The Arathi possessed remarkable abilities to navigate through nearly any gas-permeable space and could manipulate atmospheric particles through finely tuned electrical discharges, perfect for accessing secured areas and deploying Dr. Potel's aerosolized weapons. The Vrex delegation brought critical offensive capabilities. Their chitinous exoskeletons contained specialized glands that produced highly corrosive acids capable of dissolving hegemony alloys. Ketik, the SCAD commander, had led resistance cells on 3 hegemony worlds before capture. My people were the first conquered by the hegemony, Ketik clicked through the translator. We will be honored to participate in their first major defeat. Most surprising were the crystalline Folians, mathematically brilliant beings composed of living mineral lattices. The hegemony had reduced them to components in energy transmission systems, exploiting their natural ability to channel massive power loads. We have calculated the probability of success, resonated their leader, a multifaceted entity that identified as facet of many truths. With human coordination, the variables align favorably for the first time in 327 cycles. Engineer Chen unveiled a 3-dimensional schematic of the modified ship systems, highlighting connection points where each species' unique abilities would be integrated. The Arathi will deploy paralytic compounds through ventilation systems here, and here, she explained, illuminating key junctions. Vrex acid secretions will disable these security bulkheads simultaneously. Folian energy manipulation will override power distribution, allowing us to isolate the command deck. The aquatic Mrul, 6-limbed amphibians with remarkable camouflage abilities, volunteered to infiltrate the water purification system. a network spanning the entire ship that the hegemony considered inaccessible to prisoners. Even the insular Quartole, microscopic hive mind colonies, offered their collective sensory network to provide real-time intelligence throughout the ship. 7 species, 7 distinct biological advantages. Captain Martins addressed the Council. Coordinated through human strategic oversight. This is what the hegemony fails to understand about cooperation. True strength comes from diversity, not dominance. Rays established a command structure that respected each species' cultural protocols while maintaining tactical efficiency. Information flowed through encrypted channels based on biological signals the ship's systems couldn't detect. Aerothi color pulses, Vrex pheromones, Tholian crystalline resonance patterns. The coalition conducted small-scale tests over subsequent days, minor cooperative actions that appeared coincidental to hegemony observers. An Aerothi accidentally emitted sleep-inducing particles near a guard post while a Vrex prisoner panicked and sprayed acid that just happened to damage a secondary alarm system. The incidents appear unrelated, Commander Zex Tahar concluded during his security briefing. Random prisoner misconduct, nothing more. His security chief hesitated briefly. The timing seems coordinated, sir. Zex Tahar barked a laugh. Impossible. These species cannot even communicate effectively with each other, let alone coordinate actions. Their biological imperatives are fundamentally incompatible. This fundamental misunderstanding sealed the hegemony's fate. While they saw only biological differences, the coalition recognized complementary strengths, unified through human adaptability into a force greater than the sum of its parts. 3 cycles to Taraxis IV, announced Commander Zex Tahar, reviewing the prison transport schedule. Prepare all prisoners for processing and neural cataloging. The announcement accelerated the humans' timetable. With Tholian assistance, Engineer Potil finally accessed the ship's quantum drive specifications and made a discovery that silenced even her normally talkative teammates. The hegemony stole this technology, she whispered, examining the ancient symbols embedded in the drive schematics. They've been using a partial phase-shifting capability they don't fully understand. A plan crystallized that was either brilliance or madness. Working through sleepless cycles, human engineers collaborated with their crystalline Tholian allies who could survive the intense radiation fields around the drive. Extend the phase matrix through these conduits, Patel instructed, marking pathways through the ship's superstructure. The Tholians resonated in harmonious agreement, their faceted bodies interfacing directly with energy systems lethal to organic beings. Gradually, impossibly, they reconfigured the quantum drive to extend its phase field throughout specific ship sections. The first test nearly ended in disaster when an entire corridor containing 3 humans suddenly vanished, then reappeared 30 seconds later. It worked, gasped Engineer Chen, her face pale. We can selectively shift portions of the ship out of phase with normal space. Parts of the Void Claw could now exist partially between dimensions, visible but untouchable, or invisible but physically present. The implications were staggering. When an engineering technician reported power fluctuations, Commander Zex Tahar ordered a full inspection. Report back immediately, he commanded the security team. The team never returned. On the surveillance monitors, Zex Tahar watched in confusion as they entered the engineering section and found completely empty rooms where the human work crew should have been. The security chief's voice crackled over the comm. Sir, they're gone. The humans have. The transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by a human voice. Hello, Commander. We've made some improvements to your ship. The quantum drive chamber pulsed with eerie blue light as Engineer Potil and the Tholian representative, facet of many truths, examined the ancient technology at the heart of the Void Claw. These symbols aren't hegemony script, Patel murmured, tracing the intricate patterns etched into the drive housing. This technology predates their civilization by millennia. The crystalline Tholian's facets shimmered as it interfaced directly with the power conduits. The patterns match precursor mathematics. It resonated. My ancestors studied their ruins before the hegemony conquered our homeworld. Patel's eyes widened as the implications became clear. They don't understand what they possess. They've been using quantum phase shifting only for propulsion. When its true purpose was transdimensional manipulation, the Tholian completed. The drive was designed to selectively alter the phase state of matter. Captain Martins authorized the radical plan despite its risks. If we succeed, we transform the entire ship into a weapon. If we fail, we create a catastrophic dimensional collapse that kills everyone aboard, completed Dr. Okafor soberly. But the quantum mathematics check out. It's theoretically possible. The reconfiguration required unprecedented cooperation between species. Tholians interfaced directly with the quantum matrix, redirecting phase energy through conduits the humans had modified. Aerithie navigated pressurized channels to adjust flow regulators in otherwise inaccessible locations. Vrex acid precisely etched new circuit pathways into control surfaces. Engineer Chen led the human technical team. Working in the reinforced chamber, they constructed adjacent to the quantum drive. This control system will allow us to selectively determine which sections of the ship remain in normal space and which shift partially between dimensions. The hegemony designed their security around conventional physics. Rodriguez added, finalizing the control interface. They can't defend against something they can't comprehend. The first test involved a maintenance corridor in a remote section of the engineering deck. Security Officer Jackson stationed herself at one end with a modified sensor array. Phase shift initiating in 3, 2, 1. Chen activated the controls. The corridor, and Jackson with it, shimmered and vanished from normal space. Life signs, Captain Martins demanded, monitoring from their hidden command center. Stable but fluctuating, reported Dr. Warren, watching Jackson's vital signs on a medical scanner. She's existing in a partial phase state. 30 seconds later, the corridor rematerialized. Jackson stumbled forward, her face ashen but eyes bright with exhilaration. It worked. I could see through the bulkheads, straight into adjacent sections. I could observe without being observed. Subsequent tests refined their control over the phase-shifting process. They discovered they could render sections of the ship permeable, visible but untouchable, or completely invisible while maintaining physical structure. Most crucially, they could create one-way permeability, allowing humans to pass through seemingly solid walls. The final implementation extended throughout the ship's critical systems. Command deck, weapons control, life support, and security sections could now be selectively phased in or out of normal space at human command. 3 days before reaching Taraxis IV, an engineering technician noticed power fluctuations emanating from a sector authorized for human maintenance work. Commander Zex Tahar, increasingly suspicious of the primitive species, ordered an immediate security inspection. Full tactical protocol, he instructed the security team. These fluctuations match no known pattern. The security feed showed the team entering the engineering section, weapons drawn, only to find empty rooms where sensors indicated humans should be working. "Sir, there's no one here," reported the security chief, confusion evident in his voice. "But the tools are still." His transmission dissolved into static. On the command deck, the communications system activated without authorization. Captain Martin's voice filled the bridge. "Hello, Commander. Thank you for the use of your vessel. We've made some improvements you might find nightmarish." Throughout the ship, sections began to phase in and out of normal space. The Voidclaw's transformation had begun. The takeover began with a single light flickering in the officer's mess, a malfunction barely worth reporting. Then entire sections of the Voidclaw went dark simultaneously. emergency systems failing to activate. Security teams to decks 4 through 7 ordered Commander Zex Tahar, irritation edging toward concern. The teams never reported back. Surveillance footage showed them entering darkened corridors. Then nothing. All personnel to battle stations, Zex Tahar commanded, his multiple limbs working the control console frantically. Guards rushing to their posts found familiar corridors suddenly ending in solid walls, or opening into spaces that shouldn't exist. The humans have compromised the environmental systems, reported the security chief, voice tight with panic. There. His transmission dissolved into screams as the hallway around him appeared to melt into the void of space, revealing stars that what had been solid bulkheads seconds before. On the command deck, the intercom activated with a human voice. Dr. Okofa speaking with clinical calm. This is now vessel Humanity's Ingenuity, formerly the Void Claw. We control all critical systems. Surrender, and you will be unharmed. Resist, and you will experience the nightmare. A squadron of elite guards laughed, charging toward the human detention area, only to freeze in terror as the walls around them became transparent, revealing the void of space separated by mere centimeters of phase-shifted matter. Others found themselves in corridors that defied physics, sections appearing and disappearing randomly around them, with human faces watching from within the bulkheads themselves. What dark technology is this? Gasped the veteran guard as his weapon passed harmlessly through a human figure that simply smiled and stepped backward into a solid wall. The Vrex resistance fighters moved through ventilation systems, deploying human-made nerve agents with surgical precision. Aerothy floated through phase-shifted sections, bypassing all physical barriers. The crystalline Folians redirected power systems, selectively cutting off sections where resistance remained. Within 6 hours, the command deck stood isolated, all other ship sections under coalition control. Commander Zex Tahar, surrounded by his remaining officers, activated the ship's self-destruct sequence, only to watch in horror as the control panel phased out of existence before his eyes. The bulkhead behind him rippled like water, and Engineer Chen stepped through it as though it were mist. Impressive defense system, she commented, nodding at his personal shield. Then she casually extended her hand and phased one finger through the supposedly impenetrable energy barrier, stopping just short of his central neural cluster. But ultimately useless against us. The hegemony forces surrendered unconditionally 11 minutes later. Throughout the Voidclaw, hegemony personnel experienced individualized nightmares as the human-led coalition executed their precisely orchestrated takeover plan. In the security wing, a squad of 8 elite guards activated emergency protocols upon hearing the unauthorized announcement. Their commander, a battle-hardened Kraxian veteran, laughed derisively. Primitive species don't understand our response capabilities. As they charged down the main corridor toward the armory, the passage ahead suddenly terminated in a solid bulkhead where an intersection had existed for decades. Holographic projection, the commander barked, reaching to touch the wall, only to find his hand passing through solid metal. Beyond lay not the expected corridor, but a vast starfield, as though the ship had been cleaved open to space. Yet they felt no decompression, no vacuum. Impossible, gasped a junior officer, his exoskeleton plates clicking nervously. When they turned to retreat, they discovered the corridor behind them had also vanished, leaving them trapped on a small island of deck plating suspended in the void. From the stars around them, human faces emerged, watching silently. In the command center, Communications Officer Grat frantically attempted to contact security teams throughout the ship. Instead of responses, his console began emitting frequencies that triggered neurological responses in Kraxian physiology. Within seconds, he collapsed, experiencing vivid hallucinations of humans emerging from solid surfaces all around him. Medical Officer Zexlon attempted to treat affected crew members until the infirmary walls became selectively permeable. Aerothi prisoners floated through like ghosts, deploying the aerosolized compounds Dr. Patel had developed. The medical staff found their limbs growing heavy, coordination failing, while their patients remained perfectly alert to witness the takeover. "What technology is this?" demanded Science Officer Kel Thur, cornered in his laboratory by walls that kept shifting position each time he approached an exit. "Not technology," replied Dr. Okafor, stepping through a solid equipment bank. "Understanding. You believe the quantum drive was merely a propulsion system. We recognized its true potential. The most terrifying experiences befell those who actively resisted." A squad of guards who opened fire on Vrek's allies found their weapons passing harmlessly through phase-shifted targets. In response, the floor beneath them became temporarily insubstantial, dropping them precisely one level down, into a containment chamber specifically prepared with paralytic gas. Throughout the ship, resistance crumbled against an enemy that could control the very fabric of physical space. Humans appeared within sealed rooms. Weapons and defenses proved useless against phase-shifted attackers, and escape routes transformed into dead ends or impossible geometries. On the command deck, Commander Zex Tahal watched his ship fall section by section on monitoring systems that still functioned. When the bridge itself was finally cut off from all support, he activated the ultimate contingency, the quantum core overload sequence designed to destroy the vessel rather than allowing capture. "Authorization Zex Tahal Primary, execute self-destruct," he commanded. The control panel acknowledged his authorization, then rippled like water and vanished from existence. "I apologize for the inconvenience," said Engineer Chen, stepping through the bulkhead behind him as though it were merely a projection. Her hand extended toward his personal shield, the last defense of a hegemony commander, and passed through it as if it didn't exist, her finger stopping millimeters from his central nerve cluster. "Your shield technology is impressive," she commented conversationally, "but ultimately irrelevant when matter can be selectively phased." The bridge crew stayed in horrified silence. "We control what is solid and what is not," Chen continued. "What exists in this dimension and what doesn't. Your surrender would be appreciated, but is not strictly necessary for our purposes." 11 minutes later, after witnessing demonstrations of the humans' complete control over the ship's physical structure, Commander Zex Tahar formally surrendered the Voidclaw to Captain Martins. The nightmare had been unleashed. The ship was now theirs. "The Voidclaw has vanished without trace," reported the Hegemony High Command, initiating a sector-wide alert that came far too late. The prison transport, now renamed Humanity's Ingenuity, materialized without warning at the Hegemony Processing Facility on Krell Prime. Security footage captured impossible images, corridors forming from nowhere, walls becoming transparent, and humans simply walking through solid barriers. The facility's 3,000 prisoners disappeared along with the Phantom ship before reinforcements arrived. Similar incidents multiplied across the sector. Brief appearances, precisely targeted strikes, and disappearances that defied conventional physics. "They exist partially between dimensions," explained a terrified hegemony scientist before being relieved of duty for spreading panic. Admiral Vrox, the hegemony's most decorated commander, assembled a fleet of 50 warships to trap the Humanity's Ingenuity at the Cygnus Passage. "No ship can escape this blockade," he declared confidently, minutes before the human vessel phased directly through his flagship, leaving it functionally intact but with all command systems reconfigured to broadcast human music throughout the fleet. The once imprisoned coalition expanded with each raid as liberated species joined their cause. Helena Reyes established a revolutionary council where humans coordinated the diverse abilities of member species into devastatingly effective operations. Hegemony propaganda dismissed reports as exaggerations, while privately, military leaders woke screaming from nightmares of endless corridors and humans who emerged from solid walls. When the humanity's ingenuity materialized directly inside the Galactic Senate chamber during an emergency session, planetary delegates froze in terror, until Helena Reyes stepped forward, offering terms for species seeking liberation from hegemony control. "Today we extend an offer of alliance," she announced to the stunned assembly, her voice transmitting across 1,000 worlds. "Remember this lesson for the ages. It's not the strongest species you should fear, but the most adaptable. And humans, we can adapt to anything, even your nightmares." The hegemony's representative demanded military action, but found himself isolated as system after system requested membership in the newly formed Free Species Coalition. When the final peace treaty was signed, it happened aboard the humanity's Ingenuity, a vessel transformed from prison to liberation, commanded by the species once classified as too weak to matter. In hegemony military academies, a new course became mandatory: Human Adaptive Psychology, Know Your Nightmare. The galaxy changed irrevocably in the months following the Void Claw's transformation. The first indication came when Hegemony's Central Command received a puzzling transmission from Taraxis IV. "The expected prisoner transport has not arrived. Request status update." A tracking beacon showed the Void Claw precisely where it should be, in orbit around Taraxis IV. Sensor crews dispatched to investigate found only empty space. The ship existed in tracking systems, but had vanished from physical reality. 3 days later, the vessel materialized without warning inside the security perimeter of the Hegemony Processing Facility on Krell Prime. Surveillance systems captured footage that military analysts initially dismissed as fabricated. Sections of the ship appearing and disappearing, corridors forming out of nothingness, and most disturbingly, humans walking through supposedly impenetrable barriers as if they were mere holograms. "We've come for those you've imprisoned," announced Captain Martins through all communication channels simultaneously. "No resistance is advised." When security forces mobilized anyway, they found weapons passing harmlessly through phase-shifted attackers. Deployment of neural disruptors, specifically calibrated to hegemony neurophysiology, incapacitated guard forces within minutes. Before reinforcements could arrive, 3,000 political prisoners, dissidents, resistance fighters, and classified scientific minds had vanished along with the Phantom ship. Similar incidents multiplied across the sector. The humanity's Ingenuity would appear without warning, execute precisely targeted operations, and vanish before effective countermeasures could be deployed. Conventional tracking systems proved useless against a vessel that could selectively exist between dimensional states. "They're not merely using stealth technology," reported Chief Scientist Krevtor to the Hegemony War Council. "They fundamentally altered the ship's relationship with physical space. It exists partially between dimensions." He was promptly relieved of duty for spreading demoralizing pseudoscience. The Hegemony's most decisive defeat came at the Cygnus Passage, a strategic choke point where Admiral Vrox deployed 50 capital ships in what seemed an impenetrable blockade. "Nothing can pass without detection," he declared to his command staff. "This will end the human threat." Minutes later, sensors detected the humanity's Ingenuity approaching at sublight speed, making no attempt at concealment. Admiral Vrox ordered all vessels to target the approaching ship, only to watch in disbelief as it accelerated directly toward his flagship and passed through it as if both vessels were insubstantial. The humanity's Ingenuity emerged from the other side of the flagship completely unharmed. Admiral Vrox's vessel remained structurally intact, but with all command systems reconfigured to broadcast Earth music throughout the fleet. The message was clear: the humans could have destroyed them, but chose demonstration over destruction. The Free Species Coalition grew with each successful operation. Helena Reyes established a revolutionary council where representatives from dozens of formerly subjugated species coordinated their unique biological and technological capabilities under human strategic direction. Public opinion throughout the galaxy shifted as footage of the Phantom ship's operations spread across communication networks. Systems that had endured hegemony rule for generations began to question the supposed invincibility of their overlords. The culmination came during an emergency session of the Galactic Senate, where hegemony representatives demanded unified military action against the human threat. Mid-speech, the chamber's walls rippled like disturbed water, and the humanity's ingenuity materialized directly inside the Senate Hall. An architectural impossibility that left delegates frozen in terror. Captain Martins and Helena Reyes stepped forward, accompanied by representatives from 17 liberated species. Reyes approached the central podium, activating the transmission system that would carry her words to 1,000 worlds. For generations, the hegemony has classified, categorized, and controlled species based on arbitrary assessments of worth, she began. Today we offer a different model: voluntary cooperation between diverse species, each contributing unique strengths to our collective future. She outlined terms for systems seeking liberation from hegemony control: fair trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and technological exchange protocols that respected all sentient rights. Remember this lesson, she concluded, her voice echoing through government halls across the galaxy. It's not the strongest species you should fear, but the most adaptable. And humans? We can adapt to anything, even your nightmares. The hegemony's once mighty empire crumbled not through destruction but desertion, as system after system requested membership in the newly formed coalition. When the final peace treaty was signed 6 months later, it happened aboard humanity's Ingenuity, a vessel transformed from prison to liberation. The document's opening clause formally acknowledged the full sovereignty of all sentient species, regardless of physical capabilities or technological development. And in hegemony military academies, a new required course appeared in training curricula: Human Adaptive Psychology. Know Your Nightmare.